There is a new government program making headlines right now, and depending on who you are and what your situation is, it could be something you have never heard of before, or something that is being talked about in your community right now. The federal government has launched what it is calling a voluntary departure incentive, a program that offers undocumented immigrants in the United States a cash payment of $2,600 and a free airplane ticket home if they choose to leave the country voluntarily rather than waiting to face formal deportation proceedings. $2,600. A plane ticket. No handcuffs. No detention.
No formal removal order on your immigration record. That is the basic offer on the table right now, and according to multiple outlets reporting on this program, the administration has been actively promoting it through a dedicated government app as the, quote, humane alternative to what officials have described as increasingly aggressive enforcement operations. Now, here is where things get interesting. Because the reaction to this program has been complicated, the details matter enormously, and the implications for anyone in the undocumented community are serious enough that this is a story every single person in our audience needs to understand fully before drawing any conclusions. Welcome back to U.S. Benefits Update. I am Claire Hollister, and if you have been following this channel for any length of time, you know that we cover the full landscape of government programs and immigration updates that affect real people's lives. Today, we are talking about a policy that is genuinely unlike anything the immigration system has rolled out in recent memory, at least in terms of how it is being presented and marketed. This is not a traditional enforcement story. It is not a benefit story in the traditional sense either. It is something in between, a government incentive that raises real questions about what it means in practice, who it is designed for, and whether it actually helps the people who might consider using it. So let us walk through everything you need to know, because the more you understand about how this program actually works, the better equipped you or anyone you know will be to make a genuinely informed decision. So let us start with what we actually know about this program and how it came to exist. According to recent reporting from multiple outlets, the Department of Homeland Security, operating in coordination with U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, launched the Voluntary Departure Incentive as part of a broader immigration enforcement strategy. The program is being administered in part through a government-developed application called CBP Home, which is the same app that was previously used under the name CBP One and which has gone through several policy iterations depending on the administration in power. Through this app, undocumented immigrants can indicate their interest in voluntarily departing the United States, and the government then coordinates logistics, including the cash payment and the travel arrangements. The $2,600 payment is described in official materials as an incentive designed to cover the cost of resettlement upon return to the immigrant's home country, though officials familiar with the program acknowledge that in many cases, $2,600 is a modest amount relative to the actual costs of reestablishing a life abroad, particularly for individuals who may have been in the United States for many years. The free airplane ticket is a straightforward component that the government coordinates directly through contracted travel arrangements rather than reimbursing individuals for their own bookings. The program is presented as entirely voluntary, meaning that no one is being compelled to participate, and officials have emphasized that participation is a choice made by the individual. But that is not the full picture. Early indications suggest that the administration is framing this program explicitly as the preferred alternative to what officials have described as an increasingly robust and aggressive interior enforcement environment. In other words, the implicit message being communicated alongside the $2,600 offer is this: the enforcement operations are intensifying, and voluntary departure on these terms is a significantly better outcome than waiting to be apprehended, detained, and formally removed. That context is absolutely essential for understanding why this program exists and what it is actually trying to accomplish. To understand why the government is offering money to encourage voluntary departure, we need to step back and think about the economics and logistics of immigration enforcement more broadly. Forced deportation is extraordinarily expensive. The process of apprehending someone, placing them in detention, processing their case through immigration courts, obtaining travel documents from foreign governments, and physically removing them from the country can cost the federal government tens of thousands of dollars per individual case. Against that backdrop, a $2,600 payment plus a plane ticket is, from a purely budgetary standpoint, a fraction of the cost of a formal removal proceeding. This is not a new concept in immigration policy. Voluntary departure programs have existed in various forms for many decades, and the general principle of offering incentives for self-initiated departure as an alternative to costly enforcement proceedings has been part of immigration management thinking across multiple administrations. What is different about the current iteration of this program is the specific dollar amount being offered, the use of a smartphone application as the primary enrollment mechanism, and the explicit positioning of the offer against the backdrop of a much more aggressive enforcement posture than what existed under the previous administration. According to reports, ICE enforcement operations have been ramping up significantly in the current period, with workplace raids, community operations, and targeted enforcement actions occurring at rates that immigration advocates describe as among the most intense in recent memory. The voluntary departure program is being offered in that environment, which means the decision facing any individual who might consider it is not being made in a vacuum. It is being made against the backdrop of a real and heightened risk of enforcement. Now, here is where it starts to matter for everyday people, because the question of who this program is actually designed for and who it actually helps is more complicated than the headline number makes it appear. At the most basic level, the program is available to undocumented immigrants who are physically present in the United States and who do not have a pending removal order or other immigration case that would complicate their voluntary departure. Officials familiar with the matter say that the program is intended for people who are in what is sometimes called deportation order-free status, meaning they have not yet been formally placed in removal proceedings by an immigration court. But the reality of who actually considers this offer and what their circumstances look like is far more varied than any single policy description can capture. Some people who might be eligible for this program have lived in the United States for 10, 15, 20 years or more. They have American citizen children. They have mortgages and businesses and deep community ties. For these individuals, a $2,600 payment is not a meaningful inducement to uproot an entire life. Others who might consider the program are more recently arrived individuals who have not yet established the same depth of roots, and for whom the offer might represent a genuine option worth evaluating. There is also the critically important question of immigration consequences. When someone departs the United States voluntarily through a program like this, the immigration consequences attached to that departure depend on a range of factors, including how long the individual was in the country without status, whether they entered legally and overstayed or entered without authorization, and whether any prior immigration violations are on record. For individuals who have been in the United States unlawfully for more than 1 year, departing the country triggers a 10-year bar on re-entry. For those who have been here unlawfully for between 180 days and 1 year, a 3-year bar applies. These bars are not waived by participation in the voluntary departure program, and anyone who is considering this offer must understand that the $2,600 payment does not in any way erase or mitigate these existing legal consequences. Let us talk about the financial realities of this program in plain terms, because the $2,600 figure can sound like a significant amount of money without context, and it can also sound like a surprisingly modest amount, depending on your perspective. For someone who is weighing this against the prospect of detention, formal removal proceedings, and a removal order on their immigration record, $2,600 plus a free flight home may represent a meaningful practical benefit. The absence of a formal removal order is particularly significant from an immigration law perspective, because a formal order of removal can create bars to future legal immigration petitions that voluntary departure does not necessarily trigger in the same way. However, it is equally important to be clear about what $2,600 does not do. It does not pay for an attorney to review the immigration consequences of your specific situation before you make this decision. It does not cover the cost of moving your belongings or wrapping up your affairs in the United States. It does not pay for housing or employment or any other practical necessity in your destination country once you arrive. And as we mentioned, it does not waive the 3-year or 10-year bars that will apply to most people who have been in the United States without status. For someone with a spouse who is a U.S. citizen or a lawful permanent resident who could potentially petition for them to return legally in the future, triggering those bars through voluntary departure could add years to an already lengthy wait for legal status. The program is also being offered without any guarantee that the legal landscape will be more favorable in the future. An individual who takes the exit bonus and departs today has no assurance that 3 or 10 years from now, when their bar to re-entry expires, there will be a viable legal pathway for them to return. Immigration law can change significantly over those timeframes, and decisions made based on today's legal environment may not account for those potential changes in either direction. In terms of the program's current operational status and what to expect going forward, officials familiar with the matter say the program is currently active and accepting applications through the CBP Home app. The funding for the incentive payments and the travel arrangements has been allocated, and the government has been processing applications on a rolling basis as individuals enroll. Early reporting suggests that the number of people who have used the program is being tracked closely by the administration, which is interested in the program as a data point in the broader immigration enforcement conversation. Whether the program will expand, contract, or evolve in the coming months depends significantly on how the administration evaluates its effectiveness and its political reception. Some officials familiar with the matter have suggested that if the program is seen as successfully encouraging voluntary departures at a lower cost than enforcement proceedings, the administration may seek to expand it or increase the incentive amount. Others have noted that the program's future is also tied to the broader legislative and judicial environment around immigration enforcement, and that court orders or congressional action could affect how the program is administered. The reaction from immigration attorneys, advocacy organizations, and policy analysts has been measured and in many cases cautious. Immigration lawyers who work with undocumented communities have been consistent in one piece of advice: do not make any decision about this program without first consulting with a qualified immigration attorney about your specific circumstances. The reason this advice is being given so consistently is that the immigration consequences of voluntary departure are genuinely specific to each individual's situation, and a decision that might be reasonable for one person could be catastrophic for another. Advocacy organizations that serve undocumented communities have raised concerns about the context in which this offer is being made and what they describe as a coercive element embedded in its framing. Their argument is that when a government simultaneously increases enforcement pressure and offers an exit incentive, the voluntariness of the choice is compromised for many people who feel they have few alternatives. These organizations are encouraging community members to understand their legal rights regardless of their immigration status, to know what protections exist for them in any enforcement encounter, and not to make rushed decisions based on fear without first getting qualified legal advice. Policy analysts who study immigration economics have offered a more neutral assessment of the program's logic, noting that voluntary departure incentives are a standard tool in immigration policy internationally and that the United States is not unusual in using financial incentives to encourage self-initiated return migration. These analysts generally support the idea that giving people a structured and dignified way to depart the country, if that is what they choose to do, is preferable to forced removal, while also cautioning that the program should not be presented as a universal solution that works equally well for everyone in every circumstance. The real-world impact of this program is playing out differently depending on where you are and who you are. In communities with large undocumented populations, the existence of this program is generating significant discussion, with opinions divided along several lines. Some community members see it as a genuine option worth considering, particularly individuals who have been living with significant anxiety about enforcement and who may have limited ties or pathways to legal status. Others view it with deep skepticism, particularly long-term residents who feel that their community ties and contributions to the United States are not adequately recognized or valued by a $2,600 exit offer. For American families with mixed immigration status, where some family members are citizens or permanent residents and others are not, the program creates a particularly painful set of considerations. A parent who is undocumented and who has U.S. citizen children faces the prospect of either remaining and risking enforcement or departing and being separated from their children by a 3 or 10-year bar on re-entry. For these families, $2,600 does not come close to representing the value of what is actually at stake, and the decision framework is far more emotional and far more consequential than any government program description conveys. Employers in industries where undocumented workers have historically played an important role, including agriculture, construction, hospitality, and food service, are also watching this program with interest. According to reports, some industry groups have expressed concern that a successful voluntary departure program, combined with intensified enforcement operations, could create labor shortages in sectors that have long depended on immigrant labor. The economic consequences of a significant reduction in the undocumented workforce are a legitimate policy concern that analysts across the political spectrum have begun to raise, even as they disagree about what the appropriate response should be. Let us bring it all together because there is genuinely a lot to process here. The federal government is currently offering a $2,600 cash payment and a free airplane ticket to undocumented immigrants who voluntarily choose to leave the United States. The program is accessible through the CBP Home app and is being framed as the humane and dignified alternative to formal deportation proceedings. The offer does not waive the immigration bars that result from unlawful presence, meaning a 3-year bar for those who have been here between 180 days and 1 year, and a 10-year bar for those who have been here longer. The absence of a formal removal order is a genuine legal benefit of voluntary departure compared to forced removal, but it does not eliminate all immigration consequences. Anyone who is considering this program absolutely must consult with a qualified immigration attorney before making any decision, because the specific consequences depend entirely on individual circumstances. The program is currently active, and its future scope and duration will depend on the administration's assessment of its effectiveness and the broader political and judicial environment. That is the full story on the Voluntary Exit Incentive Program, and we want to hear from you. Is this a topic that is being discussed in your community? Do you have questions about how this program works or what the immigration consequences are for specific situations? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because this is exactly the kind of conversation that benefits from shared experience and shared knowledge. If you found this coverage useful and clear, please give it a thumbs up. It helps us reach more people who need this information. Share this video with anyone in your community who might be trying to make sense of this program, because being informed is genuinely the most important thing in a situation like this. And if you are not yet subscribed to U.S. Benefits Update, please subscribe right now and turn on notifications. We are covering every major development in immigration policy, government benefits, and the programs that affect your daily life. I am Claire Hollister. Stay informed, stay protected, and we will see you in the next one.